Hello, welcome. Hello, online people. Here we are again. It's Power BI Melbourne. We are talking about Fabric today. It's very exciting. Awesome technology. How many new people? Oh, lots of new people. Financial modeling's good. Okay. Financial modelling
Brings the crowds.
brings in the big crowd. Financial modelling. Yes, Alex, you're on the hook. Yes. So just a couple of quick things. So yeah, as you know, there's food and drink and stuff. It looks like you've all found that. That's great. No food for you online. You don't get food. Well, Uber Eats. If you need to go to the toilet, you go this way and you do a U-turn that way. And I think the ladies it's in the hallway anyway. That's running kind of where you came in through the elevator. So running through there, and you'll need to go out through that door. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Greg. I'm the local guy who organises the Power BI meetup. We've been doing it for quite a long time now, 8 years, longer. It's a long time. So it's great to see you all. Welcome back to those who have come back. It's great to see you. Nice to see some familiar faces and some new faces. And we do this every month. We've got all sorts of interesting things coming up as well. I'd like to thank our sponsors. One of them is Servian. We're in their building. This is a very nice office to work in. They do enterprise data and AI, multi-cloud. So if you're kind of in the enterprise space, then check out Servian. They do a lot of work in that space. They're good operators. So definitely worth checking out. And they've got a nice office here, and they let us use it. And they give us free beer, and we like free beer. We also want to thank Serious People. Serious People is Donna. Donna's not here today, but many of you know Donna. She does our BI recruiting. So if you're in the BI data space and you're looking for people or you're looking for a job, then have a chat to Donna Bowen over at Serious People or Serious IT. And that's Serious S-I-R-I-U-S. She normally has a sign here, but it's not there. Anyway, she sponsored the pizza, so I hope you enjoy. So thanks to our sponsors. It's always great. It's great that we have so much support to do this meetup. We can't do it without them. And it's great to have you, because we can't do it without you guys either. So thanks to you for coming in person, and thanks to you guys online as well. It's great to be able to get together in a bit more of a regular fashion these days, and to actually talk Power BI with people who are doing this stuff with other people. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lance. I'll let Lance give you the formal introduction of himself. He's going to be talking to us about leveraging Fabric for the future of financial modelling technology. FOFM-C. I'll let him decide. Anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Greg. Thank you. So a bit of background. I spent 20 years in corporate. So I have got my corporate badge, corporate wounds, all of those good things, across PwC, KPMG, National Australia Bank, and Investec Bank. I'm an accountant by qualification. I did all the hard yards, and I fell in love with financial modeling. And of course, if you say financial modeling, you say Excel in the same sentence, right? So one of the challenges you have. Oh, there's a bit of feedback. Oh, hang on. Well, I'll mute. Oh, actually, no. Is that better? Yeah. So one of the challenges that I started to realize is that when data gets too big for a spreadsheet, what do? Guess what I did? I created more. So I created multiple spreadsheets. And you might say, well, that's a horror. But actually, if you manage it correctly, you can have an output sheet and an input sheet. But still, to some degree, you start to blow up Excel, right? Even if you start managing 15, 20, 30 worksheets, it starts to become a nightmare. So I knew I had to get into Power BI. I knew I had to get into data, bigger than just Excel, and go beyond Excel. And so I looked at Tableau, Click, Power BI. I loved Excel, Microsoft. Why wouldn't I choose Power BI? At that stage, Power BI was about 2 or 3 years old, and it was starting to climb the magic quadrant. And I just thought, well, I'm gonna invest. And then, of course, recently with Fabric and with a good help with Greg, trying to sort of explore what Fabric does to Power BI and financial modeling. So what we're going to cover is financial modeling versus data modeling. There's a big gap in understanding of what are these two areas. They are very different, but they are also very similar in many respects. So we're going to cover a little bit of that. Some core concepts of best practice in financial modeling, what people do. Obviously, we're all in here mostly data people, but it's important to know what financial modeling is, because often finance and accounting teams are all about data. They may not recognize it, they may not use it well enough, but they are all about data. So knowing a little bit about how they build models, thinking about models, how to spot a good model versus a bad one. And then for me, how does Microsoft Fabric solve some of these challenges about a bigger data set that you still need to do your forecasting, your budgeting, your planning, a lot of the projects and the investment that you need for IT and technology comes back to some accounts and spreadsheets, right? So how do we look at that? And then how do we explore the solutions that exist now versus what Fabric is going to give us? So financial modeling and analytics, same, but different. Anyone want to have a crack at explaining what is the main difference between analytics and financial modeling? Apart from people say, oh, well, one's Excel, one's Power BI. Forget the tools for the moment. Just think about the difference, right? Financial models, budgeting, planning, forecasting. Everyone heard of that before? Painful process. Most organizations do every year. Scenarios. That's financial modeling. Analytics, all about data. There's a bit of data in here, not necessarily too much. What happens if you're a startup and you have an idea and you've got no data? Yes, okay, you've got some research, but really you don't need a lot of data to build a model. To do analytics, try to do analytics without data. There's a challenge. You can't. Any ideas? So one of the challenges that I always throw out to even accounting and finance professionals is to explain this. And the first thing I get is analytics is backward-looking, financial modeling is forward-looking, right? That's the first place most people go. But that's flawed. Anyone knows about predictive analytics, prescriptive analytics, AI? Well, that's not backward-looking, that's forward-looking. But it's data-driven as opposed to financially human-driven. So predictive analytics, because let's just focus on the two forward bits, because you can analyze in the past. Predictive analytics, very narrow, very deep on data. So it's very narrow, very focused. Maybe it's sales analytics, which is where a lot of that started. Google Analytics, a lot of information, but very narrow focus. Might be product, might be cost, but very, very targeted area of data. And it's deep. Like you need lots of it. You need lots of it to understand trends, particularly if you're doing predictive analytics. Financial modeling, conversely, is very broad. What I mean by broad, if you look at a business and you're trying to look at the data that sits in the business, well, you have an income statement, you have a balance sheet, you have a cash flow, you have expenses, you have revenue, you have OPEX, you have CAPEX. It's all of that. So financial model, very broad, but quite shallow because you probably don't go to transaction level when you're doing financial modeling. You might go to what's called a chart of account level, which is your trial balance, your income statement, your balance sheet. Those lines that exist on the horizontal are your rows. If you're thinking about a table or a matrix, the rows is your chart of accounts and how that rolls up. So these things are very similar in terms of they both enable decision making, they both enable insight, and actually together they are way more powerful. So if you have some great analytics, you can get insight to then build your model, to then have an understanding. You can also use predictive analytics to check whether your forecasting is correct. So these areas are really important. So what does a model look like? Sometimes there's a one-way model, which is just a P&L or a cash flow. Sometimes there's a two-way, a cash flow and a profit and loss combined. A three-way is your gold standard. So when someone says they're a financial modeler, the first thing I say is, have you ever built a three-way model? That's an income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow all together. And your balance sheet doesn't have hard coding. It's all formula driven and it's all linked. So your net assets equal your equity and it all balances. This is hard. You need to really work hard at building one of these. And then you have your four-way, which is just adding your sources and uses. So that's a very accounting focus. It's very complex, but everyone wants to, looking at a cash flow, investing, operating, financing, it's all accounting stuff. This brings it back to, I just want to know cash in, cash out, sources and uses. If you want to build a best practice financial model, a great way is a FAST acronym, flexible, appropriate, structured, and transparent. You can actually apply this to data modeling as well. So is it flexible? Is it going to be able to take the data? Is it appropriate? That's more for the dashboards. Is it structured? This is probably the one area that they are almost exactly the same. Financial modeling and data analytics has to be well structured. If you're not well structured, you're in a sea of mess. Whether that be, many-to-many relationships or more than one dates table or, any range of complex DAX measures that could have been actually done in transformation. And then transparency, actually seeing where the data is. Actually, Power Query is one of the greatest tools, I think, in giving you that transparency. What's happening to the data? How's it being transformed? Really, really useful, very powerful. So what I'm going to cover today is taking you through this progression of, taking data out of an Excel model, using One Lake. Just a quick show of hands, who's played with Fabric? How much do I need to cover? 3. Okay. So there's a couple of objects and a couple of digital assets that I'll cover briefly. Fabric is really a data platform beyond just a reporting tool, an ETL tool, which is Power Query. It's got a lot more engineering around it. It allows people like me who have not come from a data engineering background or an IT background to suddenly do data engineering at scale. So we can use ETLs. I assume everyone in this room knows what an ETL is: extract, transform, and load. Data flow Gen 2. And then you can store that in your Lakehouse, and then you can push that to a report. And if you really want to be fancy, you can push that to an app on your mobile. So that process is one way of taking a financial model into a Power BI environment and a data set so that you can scale. I'm not going to be building this one tonight. I will be building the next one, which is using a data mart, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I will show what this looks like. So this is a Power BI report, and this is using that process. So by building, we have our income statements, our balance sheets, and our cash flow. We're able to look at all of the different areas of our business, not just one segment like revenue. And then, I like to have a table of contents or a front page. I know if you're on powerbi.com, you get that natural menu. Sometimes you're embedded, then you don't have that menu. So just being structured, transparent, and just using it. So what I will do tonight, and I practiced it, but it probably will go a little bit slow because I'm now on a live call, is build from scratch. When I say build from scratch, I'm going to sources Excel. We're going to take a data mart. We're going to open up a data mart. So a data mart is, how do I explain a data mart? It's kind of like a construct. I mean, in terms of a data mart from a database perspective, it's a window into different parts of that database. That's, I think, technically the data mart element, but you could use this for other things. I mean, obviously it has the views, it has the roles, you can do role level security and all those things. So it's got more to it than just a database or a storage. Is that a good way of explaining it?
Yeah, departmental data warehouse.
Departmental data warehouse, there you go. That then goes to the data set then goes to the reports and then the app. And then, of course, once you've got your data set, you can then pull that data set back into Power BI Desktop, build more stuff, or just push it out to report online. So I'm going to go through that step by step and walk you through that using all of that within Fabric. So why am I so excited about this? Why did I say to Greg, I've got to do this meetup. I've got to get the word out, because there's a huge amount of disruption that is going to come into play. So let's go back to that poor accountant or finance person that's late at night pushing spreadsheets around, and they have to deal with 1,000 cost centers and all sorts of data, and they've got to update, and there's multiple links. Everyone's seen it. It's a nightmare. So eventually someone says, enough is enough. We're going to get rid of Excel. We're going to put in an OLAD Cube planning system. So what an OLAD Cube system does, it's an online analytical platform or processing. It allows you to take all the data that sits in spreadsheets, put it online, so that it allows you to do all of that work seamlessly. Very powerful, but very limited and restricted, because you need to know how to use that tool's scripting language. You have to know how to use that tool's cube, its data model. Some of that is not that transparent. So you have tools like IBP, IBM's Planning Analytics. Oracle has got an EPM. So EPM, if you ever hear the words EPM, Enterprise Performance Management, or CPM, Corporate Performance Management, Those are the tools. Workday, adaptive planning, Profix, Wolters Kluwer has Tagetic, OneStream, Venner, Board is another one. Anaplan is probably the one that's the most common, most expensive, and quite well known. Jedox, Planful, Insight Software. So these are all of the tools and software that exist to solve that problem around the size of the data and being able to manage multiple spreadsheets to do simple budgeting, planning, and forecasting. Think about every single month end. Okay, where we are against our plan. Okay, something's changed. Our run rate's not the same. We haven't sold as many products. What does that mean for our end of year? If you're a big bank, and I worked at National Australia Bank, we had to use one of these tools because everyone was sick and tired of spreadsheets. But then we were told we could only have 12 drivers, or you only could do this, or you only could do that. And of course, we didn't have the flexibility. So everyone goes back to Excel because you want the flexibility. You need the flexibility, but you have this problem around scale. So what's the issue, right? Excel, great for computation, flexibility, user base. The build cost is very, very small, but big issue with data management, transparency, version control, automation, and running costs. When I say running costs, it's human running costs, right? People working extremely long hours just to roll forward a budget or a plan. And automation, okay, yes, there's Power Query, there's VBA. VBA is not going anywhere because it's embedded in every spreadsheet they try to automate. But less of that is going to be around because of Power Query. So you have these spreadsheets that are automated, but they still have the same problem. This is the problem that Fabric fixes. So look at the other options that you have. If you go to Python, computational models great, flexibility not so much, user base small, build cost big, right? You have with Python the full data management capability end to end in one language. Venner, SAP, and other build applications, or even a purpose-built application. In the end, people need to make decisions. The citizen needs to make the decision and be able to manage and manipulate the data. That's why tools like Power BI and Excel are so powerful, because they put the decision-making power and the data power back in the hands of the business users, as opposed to IT, right? IT controlled, but not, restricted in that way. So this is it, right? You have Anaplan, SAP, Tagetic. We have this cube, entity account period, very structured, very limited, very, good from a structure perspective, but not so good from a business planning perspective. You want that flexibility. Now you can have all your spreadsheets, but you can push that into Fabric. And so you then can publish and manage that through, or in some cases, bypass the spreadsheet, go straight into source, depending on what logic is sitting in the spreadsheet. I don't think spreadsheets are going to disappear, but I think any spreadsheet that's using data and moving data from point A to point B needs to be removed. And once you get into Fabric, then now you can do more. Power BI also has its limit in terms of data. But now once you get into the cloud, you have this larger processing compute power. Of course, it's going to cost you, but let me tell you, those other systems will cost you a lot more. Any questions before we dive down the rabbit hole? Make sense?
Never worked with the financial software that we introduced, but I guess they give you more guidance of how to deal with your accounting and finance data, whereas in Power BI, you have to build all this logic from scratch, right? Did you find that like a...
Yeah. So I think 100%. So I think, all these products would come with standard templates, standard structures, standard data models. So yeah, and you then plug into that. But like everything, what happens if it changes? Everyone's working in a company or worked in a company. How often do things stay the same? From month to month or year to year, how constant is data and divisions and products? It's very flexible, very dynamic. Oh, we've got this new product. Oh, we've got this new accounting standard that's come out. Oh, there's, we've got to deal with shutdown, or we're opening a new branch, or we're closing this. It doesn't end. So from a finance and accounting perspective, you've got to deal with that flexibility. You've got to deal with that flexibility in the data world as well. But you have if you build it correctly and you have your facts and dimensions, then the data can flow through really easily. This is a different world. This is a world where you've got to do FTE analysis in terms of, we're going to hire people, we're going to fire people, we're going to, do all sorts of different things. You need more flexibility that is very difficult to do. Even in Power BI, is very difficult to do. Manage FTE. If you have people working and you take on contractors and you get rid of contractors and you give people bonuses and then you've got salaries and wages and you've got PAYG and you've got super, how to build a model like that in Power BI, it's going to be crazy. So maybe you'll have your employment model. So these tools would have like a payroll employee template that you could use. But now you want to change it. That's where it falls out of whack, because you've got to have now a specialist skill who just knows how to use that system. And if you're that person in that company who's just learned that system and you get fired or you go somewhere else, you've thrown all of that experience away. Whereas if you stay in Power BI, you stay in Excel, you stay in Fabric, the skills are transferable, and because the tools are so cheap. It's a good question. Anything else? Okay, ready to. Well, yeah, I mean, Fabric, basically, you're no longer in a spreadsheet. You're online, and so you can call a data set. So you can have multiple people hooking in to a one data set and hanging off the back of that. And even if you really wanted to, you could still have your spreadsheets, if you really wanted to, connected to that data set. So at least all the ETL, all the processing around getting the financial data, doing whatever you need to do can be automated. And then multiple people can use the data sets. It's just the write back, and then obviously you've got to watch. You've got those elements that you got to be careful of. The challenge with a spreadsheet is, multiple people working at the same time, and those other planning tools are useful because they can separate it. Well, now you can do the same. You can give someone else a Power BI dashboard, or you can give someone else a connection to the data sets, and they can still work asynchronously. So it does separate it, but it also brings it together, which is the challenge. If you just have the spreadsheet separately, everyone's working separately, and it's never coming together other than linking all the workbooks, and then links break, and people lose years of their lives wondering why we're using Excel. Okay, let's do it. So let's quickly look at the financial model, just so you can see from the start to the end, right? Good old spreadsheet. I didn't build this. It's built according to a standard called FAST. You saw the acronym before. So there's a bunch of checks. There's inputs. So if we're looking at, by the way, this is a project finance model or infrastructure. So we've got quite a long duration in terms of sales volume, cost of sales, operating costs. We've got debt as well. We've got balance sheet, working capital. Working capital is how you convert your revenue and your cost to cash. So quite an accounting focused thing. You've got tax. You have then your time series in terms of how many periods that's going to go to. So here we have 240 periods. In this workbook, also we are using what's called dynamic arrays, which is about 3 years old. So some of the advances in Excel with dynamic arrays is quite powerful. So this entire range spills. So we have our time series. I don't like seeing hashes everywhere. So, and basically going down, we've got our financial model, we've got our years, we've got a starting, we've got calculations around inflation, we've got debt, so that's the time series, and then we've got all the other information around the P&L. So, fairly sizable, spreadsheet in terms of how far down it goes with all the relevant calculations. So we're talking about tax, retained earnings, cash, So 180 rows in a spreadsheet, that's about average. It's not, I've seen a lot worse. Then we have our financial statements on a monthly basis. So we have income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, again, running across 240 periods. And this entire model is, this entire model uses dynamic arrays. And then we have annual assumptions. And then, of course, our wonderful Power BI export sheet. So what we're doing is we're taking that data, we're transforming it, we're putting it vertical as opposed to horizontal. So you would have seen it just makes the transformation far easier when we do that. And it is scalable. So we're using sequence, which is a dynamic array, and that spills downward. So that's kind of what you see. So you've got all the flexibility in the logic. So you can see the benefit of that. And then you tack on the export tab, which allows you to then, agnostic of what's going in terms of logic, you change that bit, but the output bit is really structured. So what happens then is we save that into our OneLake, right? So within OneLake, it's our OneDrive for data. I think that's the term that everyone, yeah? Is that the official? Sorry, I should turn off my AVG. And basically each of these folders are created when you create Fabric, you create your lake. And then, I have my Power BI meetup, which is here. I have, when you create your workspace and you create a lake, it spins up your staging warehouse and your Lakehouse, and of course your files. So the Lakehouse that I've got saved here is sitting in here. It's that same file. There's the fast model. It's the same Power BI file. So what I'm doing is I'm literally working on it, and I'm then going to save it into the Lakehouse. And then now I'm going to extract it. Now I'm going to bring it into Fabric. So if we just close these two, come back to that in a sec. Okay, so powerbi.com, right? I'm sure at some stage, Greg, they're going to call it fabric.com. When do you reckon? Hey, not sure. Okay, you probably can't say things publicly anyway. So what this is, it's a workspace. Everyone's familiar with Power BI workspaces. Have now become Fabric workspaces. What that means is now you've got all of these other data assets, all these other digital assets. So I have a few others here just in case things fall apart. But what I am going to do is I'm going to create my data mart. So we're going to call this PBI _ meetup _ final version 1, 2, 3. I always joke because that's what you see on spreadsheets all the time. Final version 1.2, 1.2a. And I'm guilty of it as well, because you think it's final, but nothing's ever final. So why we even say final, I don't know. And there I've just done it myself. Anyway, new and old. New version 1. So when I create a data mart, I'll just let it refresh. So as you can see, we're online. So the key thing here is all of the processing that we're doing is going to be online as opposed to on the desktop. So we have, let's just refresh that. Okay, so once still creating the data mart, I expected it to be a bit slow, so you'll have to excuse me. We are streaming through both, but effectively what it's doing, it's creating the data mart, it's creating the data set that's going to be attached to it. And now what I'm going to, once it's finished creating, I'm going to use Power Query within the data mart to bring the data in from that particular tab. I'm also going to create a dates table or a calendar table. The one I'm going to create is specific for finance. And the reason I do that is because finance works on financial years. So generally companies in Australia are 30 June year end. And so what they often want to see is where we are against this year versus last year. And if you're a 30 June year end, then your year is partway through. So everything has to roll up in those particular time periods. So that's not that straightforward. When I do interact with data people, everyone's just got a straight out calendar table. They don't get the importance of looking at it from a financial time series or a dates table. So what we've got here is we have our data set that's default, that's set up, and the data mart. So once that's created, then we are able to come into the data mart, and then what we're going to do is we're going to get data just like we do from Power Query. So we're going to select that. It's going to load it, and I'm going to go back into my OneLake to pick up that particular data asset from the OneLake. So here it is. It's just been created. The Future Financial Modeling Tech Lakehouse. So if we'll go back to just quickly our OneLake, just to show that again. So this is our Future Financial Modeling Tech Lakehouse. I think we've all made that. I don't know if that's going to go away. It's just like, everyone's got Lakehouse. Anyway, warehouse.data warehouse. We'll have to fix that at some stage, but I think everyone's suffering from the same challenge. So now, once we've selected that particular Lakehouse, we can look at the particular file. And I was really struggling with this in the beginning, and I think Greg really helped me. It was really great. Like initially, I sent him my model, and he could see it, but I couldn't. And what I didn't realize is I didn't have a gateway loaded on my machine. So suddenly, now that I'm passing data between my machine and the cloud, I've got to have a gateway, right? I'm no longer working on desktop, just locally. You don't need a gateway just working locally, but you want to go publish to the cloud, have to manage that through a gateway. So that's one of probably the biggest things that I learned when moving into using Fabric. We've got to think about the gateway. So here we have that full table. So that all looks fine. We're going to transform the data. So now it's taken that export tab and it's brought it into Power Query. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to create my dates table using a blank query. So I'm going to copy my M script. So Enterprise DNA, people familiar with Enterprise DNA? Sam McKay in New Zealand. I believe that's his. I think it's been floating around. I think Wynne Hopkins as well he's got something similar. If you are going to create anything for finance, and as I said, I'm happy to share both the model and the M script. If you are going to create something for finance, use this. Obviously, you can edit it and change it, but use this dates table, use this M script, because it has that context of a financial year that's different to a straight calendar year. So we go next. Right, and now when I'm creating the dates table, I've got to think about my data. Now I know it starts in the 1st of Jan 2024, and I'm going to the 1st of Jan 2044. So 20 years later, the start of my financial year is, the end of my financial year is 30 June. So the start is month number 7, being July. And then I invoke the query. So that then builds the dates table that's specific to a financial calendar that has a 30 June year end. If I was working on a different client, I'd change that to their particular. Your financial year ends don't change in that particular client, but they do vary quite a bit depending on the company, depending on the country. A lot of US companies have December. That's probably why US don't bother. I think every company in the US has a December year end. That's why you often don't see this challenge. In Australia, you can have your own year end. You can choose your own year end. In South Africa, I think it was February is mostly the year ends. In Australia, it's June. So it is, when you start working with different companies, you've got to always think about that. So my invoked function doesn't really help me. I like to call things what they are. This is a dates underscore table. Enter. And then I click save. Now it's going to load that data model It's going to try find relationships. It's not going to find any because I have month in my Power BI export and I have date in my dates table. So it's not going to automatically create a relationship. It's loaded all of those rows, 960 and 7,000 rows in the dates table. So have a quick look at the preview and it's processing that. That's all come through. All looks fine. Doesn't seem to be any issues. Now, this is where we can create, measures. We can create roles in terms of particular roles where you're looking at your departmental data warehouse. Also, you can create your different views based on those different roles. I'm not going to do that, but that's something that obviously the benefit of putting it into a data mart allows you to do that. I am going to come to my data model. And like I said, and I'll zoom in here a little bit. We have our dates table, we have our date, and we have our month, which is the appropriate relationship. So that's the relationship that we want to have between our dates table and our Power BI export tab. So drag and drop, either way works. So cardinality, so Power BI export is many, right? And our dates table is one. So making sure that works the right way. Assume referential integrity. I learned that for the first time a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, what's this? So it's interesting. You can do on Power BI desktop without enforcing that, but within Fabric, or at least within the data marts, it actually, it doesn't force you to. But I was like, oh, I'll just tick this. I didn't have referential integrity in my model. I'm thinking, what the hell's going on? The model's fine, and I didn't realize that the dates table, you can't have any orphans. And that's the first time I learned about what referential integrity was. That's the one benefit of going down this rabbit hole of data, is you get to learn cool new terms. So now I have that relationship between my Power BI export data in my financial model. Got all the logic there. Now it's got all my income statement, balance sheet, cash flow, and then I have my dates table on the other side. So that all works well. And now what I can do is I can close that and go back to my. I like to look at the lineage view so I can actually see the lineage of the data. So what we are seeing here is we can start to see data is coming from the Lakehouse, going to the data mart, and then going to the data set. So we're going to refresh. Obviously, you can set up incremental refresh or automatic refresh. Again, another benefit for not sitting in a spreadsheet. How do you refresh a spreadsheet? Someone's got to go in and refresh it, right? That's the benefit that you're going to get from going outside the spreadsheet and having these sort of elements. And ideally, to some degree, if you can connect that to source. And then we have our data set. And here we have our dates table. And we have our Power BI export. So nice and easy, we can already see all of that data coming through. And then I'm going to create an automatic report. I'm going to pre-select my data. So I'll just zoom in a little bit here. Oh, actually, it doesn't zoom in the right-hand side. Let's grab that, move it across. So financing, operating and investing cash flows. So in a business, operating cash flows is the cash flow that you get generated just through operating the business. Investing cash flows, where you invest in technology, or you might invest in bricks and mortar, or you might be doing other sort of investing activities. You might even sell something. Let's say you sell a building. That's still an investing activity. That's an inflow. An outflow is where you're buying something or you selling something. So it's not part of your normal operations. If you're buying and it's not buying and selling goods and services. That is operating cash flows. And then your financing cash flow is, how do we pay for that? Maybe we have debt. Maybe we get equity. People put money into the business. So now I want to look at that and I want to compare that over the financial year. So not entirely pretty, but a good start in terms of automatically generated reports. But if I go back to my Power BI example down here, now what we're doing is we're actually in a mixed storage mode. So we're actually using a composite model where we're bringing in the data from the data set. If I look at go to my data model here, I can actually see it's coming from Fabric. If it doesn't get, actually, I should have put my zoom it tool on, but we can see where this information is coming from in terms of, so when you do have information being stored and held, this file will obviously the thin report will be a lot smaller in terms of actually having to bring all of the data and load it all into the report. You can connect it straight through powerbi.com. So it's not the exact same data that you saw, but at least now we can start to see our income statement. We can see that over time. We can see some of our cards and our measures, and I can build this myself. Like, I don't need to have an expert. It's a lot quicker. It's cleaner. So I have my card metrics. I have my slicer over here, my financial years. So I can start to select different financial years and see the changes of that over time. Takes a little bit to refresh. If I want to take a particular FY24 to 26 and 25, just want to look at those 3 years, all of that information will refresh. So income statement, balance sheet, and cash flow. So if you speak to anyone who's in accounting and finance, they always talk about the P&L or the income statement or the balance sheet. And the tools that are available at scale is often quite a challenge. So, and then of course we have our hierarchy in terms of how we tier the cash flow and all the different matrix tables. So that's it, folks. There's another example here that I've got where also using Monte Carlo simulation. So it's a far more advanced form of modeling. Some of you might be familiar with it. So, when you start to do scenario analysis, so when you build a financial model, it's building a forecast. There's a great saying by statistician George Box: all models are wrong, some are useful, right? So the reason for that is no one can predict the future. We can get close, but we can never predict it 100%. So in order to understand the scenarios and things that change, whether it's a new product or a new division, or currency might change if you're trading overseas, all of these things impact the outputs of the model. So one way of dealing with that is sensitizing some of those assumptions and seeing the impact. That's called a sensitivity, where you change one variable. If you change multiple, let's say you're changing volume, price, and cost of goods that you're selling across a whole range of different products, that's a scenario. So you're changing many, but now I want to run 5,000 simulations like I'm doing here, or maybe I want to run 1,000,000 simulations, or it allows us to select what is the top and the bottom range of that simulation. So let's say interest rates. Interest rates can go anywhere from where it is now, up 3% or down 3%. That's the range, and we let the randomness of the simulation calculate the result in between and calculate that 5,000 times. To do scenarios 3 times takes a fair amount of time, but how long will that take to do 5,000? A lot longer. So Monte Carlo simulation allows you to build randomness in the financial model, so you can then see the distribution. You get a normal distribution, you got a different curve. So here you have enterprise valuation, which often is an important thing, or EV. So in this simulation, my minimum enterprise value is 5.2 million. My max is 30.3. I have an EBITDA, which is my earnings before interest, tax, and depreciation. EBITDA is a proxy for cash, like free cash, and that's what they use for valuations. So I can see the curve. I can, I have my slicer here. I can look at particular enterprise valuations and change that. And all of this again is connected back to Fabric. And then we can look at some of those, information. I mean, obviously it's quite a linear model, which you can see that there's nothing funky going on in terms of seasonality. But it helps you just get a bit of an understanding in terms of more advanced financial modeling versus just the stock standard forecast, because all forecasts are going to be wrong some way. It's by how much, and simulations allows you to do some of that. So questions? Yep.
Analyst people, when they see, we get these spreadsheets all the time from finance people. And the mistake that I think people make is they try and recreate the scenario builder or model inside Power BI rather than just taking this kind of Power BI export approach. Can you talk a little bit through that thinking?
Yeah, it's a great question, Greg. And I think it comes back to where we came from. So we used to build these complex models, and it took me 18 months to get my head around how do I put this model into Power BI. It's kind of when you know you want to do something and you just like, I don't care what it takes, I'm going to do it. So no matter which way I tried, I couldn't find an easy way to do it until I got to this. And so one of the things, the first thing you need to do is transform, right? So you need to take what's often a horizontal, a lot of finance spreadsheets are horizontal. You know, the reason they're horizontal, you look at the financial statements in any company and they're horizontal as well, right? Last year, this year, so it's the way they think. But when you go into the data world, you're in the table structured world. So that's the first big thing. So I knew I had to flip that. So in this, what we are doing, you know, before dynamic arrays was around, we used to use index, the formula index in Excel. You know, I have 240 periods. I just go one, you know, the cell before it +1, drag down 240, and then I just select the particular range horizontally, and I use index for that. So I select the index. Now I want to take number 1 of the index, number 2, and that's the first Power BI export tab I created using index. But then because lambdas is because dynamic arrays are around now, see here even we've got the transposed dynamic array. So it's that flip. That's the first thing, and then it's like I don't need to worry about all your logic. I'm just going to go and I'm going to pull all of that through. And so let the scenario manager do its stuff. You know, let it output. So that simulation actually gets run in VBA. And then puts out all of those simulations, and then I just grab that and I put that into Power BI. So that it's the transformation, but then it's also the structure, thinking about I need to create the structure, I need to create the table, and then what lines am I going to take? What are the important lines? Don't want to take everything into it. So I always start with what am I trying to do? Start with why. Start with the end point. What am I trying to do first, and then work backwards? Because you don't want to take the entire model into Power BI. You just want to take the key things that matter. What are the key things that people want to see? What are maybe the scenarios, cash, profit, revenue? There's probably, you know, half a dozen that are absolutely critical. But then, of course, like everything, they want more and more and more. So here I just put in the entire income statement, starting from top to bottom. So revenue, cost of sales. But some of the times you can do the calculations here, but other times you can do the calculations in Power BI. There's arguments both ways, but I wouldn't be doing scenario analysis unless you're going to buy a tool like ValQ or InfoRiver. Then that's probably the only time I do scenario analysis and simulations in Power BI is using one of those tools, but they also have their limitations like everything else.
Somehow when a financial analyst can do their own day-to-day calculations.
Yeah, so what I'd say is the core financial data I'd bring in. And then things like, you know, here's ratios. Hang on, I really do need to get my Zoom it. I'm gonna go get my Zoom it tool so I can zoom in because I can't expand. Where's Zoom it? You've used Zoom it before, Greg?
Yes. Zoom it's great. You have to click on the thing to remember you.
Okay, let's go. So let's go back to our, I love the question. Right, so
just 1 sec, Max. The online people are asking, can you repeat the question?
sorry. So the question is, how do I make the distinction? Just tell me if I'm wrong. How do I make the distinction between doing some calculations inside the spreadsheet versus doing the DAX in Power BI? What's the decision-making process? So the first thing is my core financial information, like revenue, expenses, core financials out of the income statement and the balance sheet. I would take that and take that from Excel and push that in. So I'm not doing a bottom-up build of my revenue. So how you would do that is you'd go to your transaction information, you'd go to your account code, you'd aggregate that through a DAX statement. Right? You can, but all goes back to like, do it at source or do it in the system, or take, if it's a Microsoft Dynamics, for example, Dynamics already does all that work for you. So in a spreadsheet, it's the same thing. Let the spreadsheet do some of the more core accounting work. But when it comes to ratios, I want to use DAX. Why? Because I want to look at that ratio from different perspectives. I want to look at all those different elements. I want to use the slices. So the moment I want to take a metric and I want to see it from different contexts, that's when I want to do it in DAX. And I want to create the measure, and I want to put that measure in a card, and then I want to use the slicer. I want to put that measure across a chart or a dashboard. So that's kind of the key thing. So what you'll notice is all our measures that we've created here, we group them into balance sheet, cash flowing, and income statement. So balance sheet, our current ratio, so current assets to current liabilities, current assets, there's a value, there's a debt value, debt to asset ratio. A lot of these are ratios and metrics. I wouldn't be doing that inside Excel, because I'm not going to have that filter context in the DAX measure, so that the visual is not going to work. So there's no point in me pulling that and doing the calculation at source. I want to do the calculation in Power BI. So the same thing here. So we've got cash flow measures and all of those elements there. So I like to store group. I know there's different views as to where you put your measures, inside your facts, or you put them in the particular dimension. We're working across multiple tables and particularly when you're working through time. So I always like to put my measures separately, and of course, have that in a particular table. Good question. Anything else? Any questions online, Greg?
There's a couple of questions, but I answered them. They're around SSMS and how you would use it in this case. It's probably for me rather than.
Yeah, that's definitely a question for you.
Yeah.
Thoughts? Yep.
That are not really kind of generic. Like, do you bother with this kind of stuff, or
You bother with this kind of stuff?
I was wondering, like, yeah, should we hack now something together, spend weeks over getting this table done, or you just say, hey, just do it in Excel? And
It's a great point. So I think if you're going to just put it in a table and it's just going to sit there in a table, you're not going to actually put it into a visual, then I'd say just do it in Excel and put it through. So gross profit is a good example, right? So gross profit is just revenue minus cost to get gross profit. So that gross profit's actually sitting in Excel. It's a basic calculation. It's one minus the other. Yes, I could have done it in DAX, but it's not critical. Something like a gross margin percentage, I might want to put that metric, in some cases, if I need to absolutely put it in a table, then I need to think about how the table's structured. But this is where, putting stuff into a matrix, or not a table, but you know what I mean, like putting into a matrix can be quite challenging when you want to have, and that's where to some degree I start to think about, well, maybe InfoRiver is a better tool to use because I can just drag and move stuff and I can have measures inside a table. Have you looked at InfoRiver? Correct. Yeah. I mean, I haven't found the need to use that much paginated reports. I'm sure we will at some stage, but we just tend to have a lot of the stuff just in having slices and having the same report, just with the ability to look at it from different divisions, different departments, different times. It's a great question. So this is where you start to straddle the data analytics world and the financial modeling world. So when you want to go granular and you want to go deep, this is not that, right? This is about, now I might have a separate page that's got a separate data feed straight to source. Hey, you want to know what's in sales and revenue? Here, go to the Dynamics extract sales and revenue. Don't go anywhere near Excel because that's just crazy. And you have your direct query back into the Dynamics database or somewhere else and just pull that in. And you have that as in the same report. And this is the thing that I say to people, it's if you bring analytics and financial modeling together, you can't do it in the same, necessarily the exact same visual, but, in terms of drill down. I think for the sake of just going into the next tab, it's but the amount of effort that you've got to do to build the bottom up, to drill through, it's insane. And I don't think that effort is worth it. So I'd say, if you want to know what's in revenue at a transaction level, I'll create another tab and I'll say revenue drill down, and then someone can go for their life. But then that doesn't go anywhere near Excel. That's going straight to the source system. That's where you've got to really be careful because it can be quite confusing. You say, well, am I building a financial model or am I building a data model? I know technically they're kind of both data models, but you know what I mean? Like one's very granular, very narrow, very deep. Yes, I'd do that. One's staying high level, more strategic, more looking across the whole business. But you bring these two worlds together and it's incredibly powerful. I mean, I've been waiting for this moment. I said the world of financial modeling and analytics has to merge. They have to come together. It takes people like myself to kind of step out and do it because I think the world of accounting and finance is still stuck in a spreadsheet. And there's huge opportunities for them and there's huge opportunities for data people to understand accounting and finance because they are struggling. I see it all the time. And that's part of the reason why we went into data analytics, because we saw that there was opportunities to bring our finance knowledge into the data world. Silence.
8 seconds with no question. That means it's over. Let's give Lachlan. Thank you, Lance. That was awesome. I took a lot away from that. I've done a lot of trying to recreate these sorts of things in Power BI in my youth, and it's really interesting to see that it's almost like use the power of the tools that you have in the ways that they're good at, and then arrange your data in a way that you can use both. And I really think that's a powerful idea. So I took a lot away from that. But that's it for this month. Thank you very much. It's great to see you all. Feel free to eat all the pizza on the way out. Next month, I think we've got Sam Fisher. Is that right? Sam, what are you going to talk about? Do you know yet?
I'm going to talk about building a Power Query star schema. You can do it manually, you can do it automatically, but out of the box. Easy ways to do it.
Cool. So Sam Fisher is going to talk about Power Query star schemas. So look forward to that next. So that'll be late November. It'll be our next meetup. So we'll see you all then. But thank you to Lance. That was great. Thank you all for coming along. Thank you to all online. Great to see you. We will put the recording up on YouTube if you want to show your friends. We'll link that out, and then we'll see you next month. But feel free to hang around, have a chat, have a beer or a fake beer or whatever you want to do. But we will be, if you can help us clean up a bit as well, that'd be great. But and other than that, thanks very much, guys. Cheers.